You spot her across the room. Something moves in your chest, and then, without even thinking about it, you look away first. You don't text her, you don't linger, you go home, pour something, and by morning, she's already filed somewhere behind your ribs where she can't reach you. That's a whole operating system. I'm Franklin, and today we're pulling apart the psychology of Black Gen X who never begged for love, where that came from, what it cost, and why the ask itself started to feel like the danger. Let's start with what you actually do, because the behavior is the fingerprint. You don't chase, you don't double text. If somebody pulls back, you match their energy so fast it looks like a reflex, and it is. You keep the ledger even. If they give you 70, you give them 70. Nobody's ever going to catch you giving 100 to somebody who's giving you 50. That's the rule you never wrote down, but you've been living by since you were maybe 9, 10, 11 years old. And when it ends, you walk clean. No begging, no big scene, no long letter. You might grieve in private for a year and a half, but out loud, it is what it is. We wasn't right anyway. You've got a whole vocabulary designed to make the exit look like it didn't cost you anything. You've been rehearsing that vocabulary your whole life. Now here's where it gets interesting, because a lot of people your age carry a version of this. For Black Gen X specifically, the numbers show something bigger than personality. Pew Research looked at 40-year-olds in this country who had never been married, and Black 40-year-olds were significantly more likely to have never married than Hispanic, white, or Asian 40-year-olds, a record high share. When one group breaks that far from every other group, something structural is under it, and the census data lines up right behind it. As of the 2023 American Community Survey, only about 31% of Black adults were married, compared to closer to half of American adults overall. Around half of Black adults have never been married. Half. Something happened. And when you look at when it happened, the answer walks you right back to your childhood. The never married rate for Black Americans aged 35 and up was sitting in the single digits and low teens for a long time. Then around 1980, it started climbing, and it kept climbing for decades. Meanwhile, the never married rate for white Americans barely moved by comparison. So the question isn't why folks don't beg for love. The question is what happened starting around 1980 that rewired a whole generation's blueprint for how love is supposed to work. You already know. You were there. You were the generation it happened to. Look at what your house looked like. Census data from that stretch shows Black family groups with children headed by one parent jumping hard between 1970 and the mid-80s, from about a third of those households to well over half in roughly 14 years. That's the U.S. Census Bureau, straight from the count. So if you were born between 65 and 80, your childhood is sitting right on top of the steepest rise in single-parent Black households this country has ever measured. Elwood and Crane, writing in the Journal of Economic Perspectives in 1990, put it another way. Black children living with two parents dropped from about 2/3 in 1960 to less than 2 out of 5 by 1988. That's your childhood in one sentence. Now, I'm not here to tell you a one-parent house is a broken house. Some of the most solid people you know were raised by one person doing the work of three. Real talk. But the emotional math of your childhood ran different from what the storybooks were showing. And when the math is different, the rules you learn about love are different. Here's the thing folks don't say out loud. Kids don't just watch their parents. Kids study their parents. You were watching to figure out what love looks like when it stays, and what love looks like when it leaves, and how much you were allowed to ask for before somebody looked tired. And a lot of you were in houses where the adult in front of you was stretched so thin that asking for one more thing felt like a small kind of cruelty. So you stopped asking. No trauma porn about it, that's just Tuesday. Now stack the next thing on top. Because your teenage years, roughly 1984 to 1994, that window right there, that's the crack era. And the research on this is not soft. Fryer, Heaton, Levitt, and Murphy, writing for Chicago Booth, looked at what crack did in that decade, and the homicide rate for Black males aged 14 to 17 more than doubled. Fetal death rates jumped. Low birth weight babies jumped. Kids in foster care jumped. Those same researchers estimated that crack alone accounts for a big chunk, somewhere between around 40 and 70% of the drop in Black male high school graduation rates in the mid-80s. Read that again. Almost half to almost 3/4 of that graduation drop tied to one drug in one decade on your block. And another study, published in the Journal of Sociology and Social Welfare, tracked the share of African American children living with just their mother. It moved from around 20% in 1960 to more than half by the 80s and 90s. So the exact age you were forming your blueprint for what love does, Who stays, who goes, what's safe to want. That's the exact window when the ground was moving under a lot of black kin networks. Cousins disappearing, uncles gone, a neighbor who used to check on you now on the other side of something you couldn't understand yet. You don't come out of that generation with your heart flapping in the wind. You come out of it with a door and a lock and a peephole. So what does the actual psychology say about how that door gets built? This is where it stops being vibes and starts being research. There's a longitudinal study by Fraley and colleagues on the origins of adult attachment. They followed people over years and years, and one of the strongest predictors of what they call avoidant attachment in adulthood, the technical name for the pattern of staying self-contained, not reaching, not needing, was father absence in childhood and shifts in how sensitive the mother was able to be during those childhood years. Not because mama didn't love you, because mama was working 2 jobs and the lights had to stay on. Another study, published in 2024 through PMC, looked at attachment styles and parental separation or divorce. Avoidant attachment was significantly more common in people whose parents had separated. Statistically significant result. That's the mechanism. Household disruption during childhood, adult pattern of not reaching. Call it a documented human response. Now here's where I want you to catch yourself, because a lot of folks your age hear that and immediately go, nah, I'm good, that ain't me, I'm just built different. Baby, that is the pattern. The pattern doesn't feel like a wound. It feels like self-respect. It feels like being grown. That's why it's so hard to see. From the inside, it feels like the thing you got right. Let me put it in a scene. You're seeing somebody for 6 months. Things are decent. One night she says something like, I don't feel like you're really letting me in. And you go quiet because inside your head, you're thinking, I'm here every weekend. I paid for the trip. I fixed the thing on your car. I text you good morning. What more you want? And what she's asking for is the one thing your childhood taught you not to hand over. She's asking for the ask. She wants to hear you need her. And the word need got taken out of your vocabulary before you were tall enough to reach the light switch. So you say, I'm just not a real emotional dude, which is true, and also a story you inherited, not a fact about your soul. Now let's talk about the men specifically for a minute, because there's a whole separate layer here that the research is finally starting to look at. There's work coming out of Stanford, Adams and colleagues, written up in the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education on what they called racialized masculinity. Their finding was that black men are navigating a version of masculinity that ratchets up the pressure for emotional stoicism and self-reliance, even beyond what regular hegemonic masculinity demands. In plain English, the rest of the world already tells men to shut it down. For black men, the volume gets turned up higher. And the researchers linked that intensified suppression to real mental health risk. And there's a study out of PMC, Emerson and colleagues, 2021, on incarcerated black men that found what they called restrictive emotionality, that lockdown, don't show nothing style, was directly linked to childhood experiences of abuse and reduced closeness with parents. That emotional suppression predicted worse coping strategies as adults, meaning the very thing you built to survive is now the thing standing between you and the peace you actually want. For the women, the script is different, but the outcome rhymes. A lot of black Gen X women were groomed by watching to be the one who holds it all up, who doesn't ask, who figures it out, who calls somebody else to check on them before somebody checks on her. The independence is real and it's earned and it's a skill. But the same muscle that lets you carry 3 jobs in a household will also let you sit across from a man who's half present for 2 years and not say a word about what you actually want. Because saying what you want feels like weakness, and weakness feels like danger. And danger is what you spent your whole life engineering out of your day. Nobody's begging, everybody's grown, everybody's cool, and a lot of folks are lonely inside a life that looks, from the outside, like it's working. Let me hit you with something that ties it together. That never married number, around half of black Americans, according to the census, a lot of the conversation about it goes straight to blame. Blame the men, blame the women, blame the culture, blame the app. That conversation is a dead end because the number is downstream of the household math of 1970 to 1990. It's downstream of that jump in single-parent black homes in 14 years. It's downstream of the crack era hollowing out the kin network at the exact hour a generation of kids needed to see adults sticking. It's downstream of a masculinity script that told the boys the ask is weakness and a survival script that told the girls the ask is a luxury you can't afford. You didn't decide not to beg. You inherited a system that made begging feel like the most dangerous thing you could do, and you're good at it. You're so good at it. You can walk out of a 5-year situation with your face flat. You can hear, "I don't think I love you anymore," and say, "Okay," and mean it. That's a skill. Under different conditions, that skill saves somebody's life. Here's the honest part, though. The same self-containment that kept you safe as a kid is the wall the person who wants to love you now cannot climb. They're standing on the other side of it saying, "Just let me in a little bit," and you're on your side going, "I did. I let you all the way in. I texted back within the hour." And you both mean it, and you're both right in your own math, and you both go to bed frustrated because the language don't line up. So what do you do with all that? I'm not going to sit here and tell you to go be vulnerable. That word has been used up. And besides, be vulnerable to somebody with this wiring sounds like go stand in traffic. What I will tell you is smaller than that. Notice the flinch. When somebody offers you something, care, a compliment, a real question about how you're doing, watch what your body does. It probably deflects. It probably makes a joke. It probably says, "I'm good," before the sentence is even finished. That flinch is old. It's older than the person in front of you. They didn't cause it and they can't fix it, but you can name it, at least to yourself. Just, "Oh, there it goes again." That's the whole move. You don't have to override it on Tuesday. You just have to see it. Second thing, there's a difference between asking and begging, and your childhood didn't have time to teach you the difference. Asking sounds like, "Hey, I'd like to see you this weekend." Begging sounds like, "Please don't leave me." You collapse both of those into the same category and put them both in the do not use drawer. One of them is safe to take back out. One of them is how grown people who like each other stay connected. Practice the small one. "I want to see you. I liked hearing from you. That meant something to me." Those are asks. Your system will treat them like begs for a while. Push through it. Third thing, and then I'll let you go. The story you tell yourself about why you're like this matters. If the story is, "I'm cold, I'm a loner, that's who I am," you're locked in. If the story is, "I built a really useful survival skill in a really specific decade under really specific conditions, and now the conditions have changed and I get to update the skill," you're free. Same person, same history, different story. The story is the door. You didn't fail at love. You survived a stretch of American history that put a whole generation of black kids inside a math problem their parents never had to solve. You came out of it with your head on straight, a job, a car, and a heart that works. It just works quiet. Nothing wrong with quiet. Just don't confuse quiet with empty. Ain't the same thing. Now think about what this pattern does to friendship, not romance. Because a lot of Black Gen X will tell you straight up, "I don't really have close friends anymore." Not because you fell out with anybody, just because keeping the ledger even applies there too. You don't call first. You don't say, "I miss you." If somebody drifts, you let them drift, and you tell yourself if they wanted to be here, they'd be here. Which is true, and also a rule you use to make sure you never have to be the one standing there with your hand out. Same wiring, different room in the house. And look at how it shows up with your own kids, if you got them. A lot of Gen X parents swore up and down they were going to do it different than what they saw. And you did. You showed up. You said "I love you" out loud, which your people maybe didn't. You went to the games. But when your grown kid calls you and says, "I'm struggling," watch what happens in your chest. There's a part of you that wants to fix it, pay for it, solve it, anything but sit in it with them. Because sitting in it means feeling it, and feeling it means the door cracks. And the door don't crack. Not on your watch. That's the inheritance moving down another generation if you don't catch it. Your kids learn the same lesson you learned. The adult in front of me can handle the doing, but not the feeling. So I'll bring them the doing problems and take the feeling problems somewhere else. And now they got a version of your wiring. Softer maybe, but still there. One more thing, and I mean it this time. The research on avoidant attachment has a hopeful piece to it that doesn't get talked about enough. Nothing about it is fixed. Nothing about it is a personality type you're stuck with till the casket. It's a learned response, and learned things can be unlearned, slowly, with somebody safe, over time. That's the whole science. You don't need a retreat. You don't need to cry on cue. You just need one or two people you let a little closer than the rule allows, and you let the discomfort of that sit for a minute instead of sprinting for the door. You spent 40, 50 years getting good at not needing anybody. Give yourself a couple years of getting a little bit worse at it. Call it a software update on a system that's been running since Reagan's first term. All right, go watch the one playing right there on the screen. I'll see you on that one.